Okay, so we're recording and we're here on 6. Cheryl and Jackie, we're missing you, but we completely understand that you both must be caught up with work kind of stuff. So Sharella and I will go through the session. Obviously, it's being recorded and I'll get it up sometime tomorrow and you guys can catch up with it online. It'll be probably a bit of a shorter session, one, because there's just the two of us, and two, actually, this topic really feeds back into a lot of things that we've been doing previously. We were waiting for a little bit, so we're kind of running a bit behind time, but that's fine, we'll catch it up. As usual, the types of things that we're going to be covering are on the screen. They follow the same sort of format that we've had before. Just a couple of 3 new little points to tell you about. One is that I've had some people from other groups ask me about vet fee help, and someone had the understanding that if they got retrenched or laid off, that vet fee help would be a problem for them, but it's not. So they thought you had to be physically employed in order for your vet fee help to be eligible, but that's not true. For some other people who I know might be fee-paying students, again, if people start running into problems with work or things like that, we're encouraging people to go back and look for vet fee help, and I can talk about that one-on-one with anybody that they need it. The other thing is extensions. Obviously, with everything going on with the virus, and I already know one of our group needed to apply for this. So if you find for whatever reason that you do need to apply for an extension for any of the assessments, just let me know. Again, TAFE New South Wales is very mindful that for some people that's a reality. And the third thing, which is interesting, is the idea of being able to progress ahead. Now, it's not so relevant at this moment in time, but if there are some people who end up, not being able to go to work and they've got extra time on their hand, again, person from another group raised this, if they're progressing through the assessments pretty quickly and they want to, towards the end of this semester, look at what is some of the subject content from next semester, then again, I'm aware that that might happen towards the end of this semester, and I've been talking to Sue about the possibility of opening up next semester's subjects and content for people to get a bit of a head start on that if they want to. Again, not relevant right now. I think for most people, we've all got more than enough to do with keeping on as we are, but I'm just raising that and having it here recorded for you, Cheryl and Jackie, just to let you know that we are thinking about it and we are onto it. We're onto those ideas. So our progress points, again, very similar to the previous weeks. I'm sure everybody's all over that. We've got, I haven't been very active on the forums myself in responses because I've been held up a little bit with some assessments. And thank you to everybody in this group who got their assessments in. I'm sorry I haven't done the most recent marking. But again, there's marking going on with the other groups and that's all carrying on. So what have we got coming up with our assessments? You can see I've put down here the ones that are done, and I'll mark the questions over the next couple of days. Great work overall on all of those. And it's not till the 3rd of April that our next one is due, and that's that essay and project brief. But the 3rd of April, you'll see my calendar jump up, is actually next week. So this assessment, it's worth 30%. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what that involves. And the key thing about this assessment, so it's writing a bit of a project brief for a resource. And my understanding is that the stuff you do in this project brief may lead into the 3rd assessment for this subject, develop resources. So this in some ways is a great sort of set of assessments. First of all, here's the project brief about what kind of resource might I develop and why. And then, so it's almost the planning part of the assessment. And then assessment 3, it'll be taking those plans and developing those resources. Again, lots of information in the subject guide under the rubrics about how that assessment will be assessed or marked against what parts. And this time there is a criteria about referencing. So again, for this group, in the past, you guys have done reports or project briefs and things in other subjects. I'm very confident about everybody's ability here to be able to think about what kind of resource they might develop in the process. And there's a lot of considerations in the subject guide to help guide you with that. So, Shirella, do you have any questions about that assessment that's coming up, or are you feeling, have you looked at it yet? You may not even had a chance to look at it.
I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I'll have a look at it tomorrow, and I think I should be okay. If I have any questions, I'll put it up to you. Thank you.
Fantastic, that's right. And again, not compulsory, but on that assessment tab, there is that assessment forum, which is not accessible. It's meant to be just an open chat. So, you know, feel free to just email me direct. Of course, that's always the case. We can have a chat on the phone, but also for, you know, Jackie and Cheryl who might be listening to this in the future, if you do have a question, you think, oh, I wonder if others might have the same question, again, feel free to pop it up in the assessment tab forum. And the other thing, just coming back up here, that we have to really start working on with this group is getting these participation in the forums. So some of those forum activities happening. But again, I know we've got this big one, 30%, coming up next week. So don't worry too much about this. But over the upcoming weeks, we might talk a bit more about those forums. And just make sure by the end of the semester, everybody's got 5 posts if they want maximum marks, but 3 will give you a pass mark, forum posts for the 2 different subjects. So, all right, great. Let's get into this content. So what we're talking about, as usual, we do a little bit of chatting about what's coming up. So we're feeling on top and confident about what's coming up. So we're really at the case now where for this subject, we're looking at week 5 and 6, and that's topic 5. Funny enough, that topic is the same as the subject. So, you know, the whole idea of identifying training needs. And really, it's 3 broad areas. What is a training needs analysis? It's the where, the what, and the who, and talking a bit about benchmarks and budgets. Again, the content of this really ties in a lot to previous content of understanding our adult learners and what learning they need and why, what characteristics they have. So we'll jump straight into it. So really the point of a TNA, a training needs analysis, it helps recognise what might be some of those gaps that people might have that they need training in to be able to do their job or their task or the project or whatever it is that we are training them in and why. It really helps identify, in a perfect world, what's the expected performance level, and then maybe for a group or sometimes an individual, what's their current performance level. So what's that gap that will be filled best by training? And then we develop a program, a learning program, a training program around those identified gaps to be able to get them from what they know now to what they need to be able to know and what they need to be able to do. It really helps managers identify those performance gaps or those knowledge gaps, and then outlines a plan about how we're going to fix those gaps with the appropriate forms of training. So they can be done in a one-on-one individual kind of basis, but often a training needs analysis will be done broadly over like an organisation, and there could be multiple training needs analysis depending on job roles or perhaps things like new hires, or if there's a change in policy or a change in equipment. All of those things can lead to a new training needs analysis being undertaken. There's no set format or definitive form that really needs to be used. In fact, often, you know, it'll be like a project brief saying we're bringing out this new process in the current environment. We've got this new challenge happening, and this is how our organisation's going to address that new challenge, and this is the training that people will need to be able to do that. It can be an ongoing process of getting the data from what do people currently know, and that can change in level or in type of things that people currently know. It can be like a start and a stop point. So we're rolling out a brand new process or a brand new piece of technology. We're rolling it out in June. Say in a call centre, for example, we're putting in a new piece of software or a new platform, and we'll need to have, XYZ groups of people up to speed on that new platform or that new thing. In many respects, a TNA sounds very intense or extensive, but it's also a pretty, it's a process that most people almost do automatically. Like most people, when we go to plan a training thing, we don't just pull it out of the air. Like we go, there's a reason we're going to do this training program. And this is the reason, and this will be the content. So it sounds really quite extensive and detailed, and it can be, particularly organisational wide ones, but it also can be quite narrow and specific for an individual, their role, or a new thing that is coming in. Of course, like all training or learning activity, there's an expectation that it will align with the organisational objectives. So we don't just do training for the sake of training. There's a reason why it's happening, and that'll be aligned with something that the organisation is trying to achieve. So basically, it provides these crucial insights onto what kind of training is required, where it needs to be directed. It's that whole where's it going to happen, what's going to be the content, to whom is it going to happen, or who's going to be involved, where are we going to get the content from that will be part of the training. So whether that'll be internal policies, procedures, documents, or sometimes, you have to bring in some external sources of information, particularly maybe if you're rolling out a training program for leadership and management. You've identified that some of the team leaders, you have been promoted to that role without perhaps some leadership and interpersonal managing skills being developed in your people. So you might look externally for a different program to fill that gap. And we're all about, in this subject, designing the effective training for the employees. It is true that sometimes organisations, and in fact people, can be a bit unsure of exactly what are we training. And a bit like one of the other sessions we had on this subject, you can go through a process, or with resource development, you can go through a process where you're plotting out the training and you realise, hang on, I don't know that we need a training program for this. Maybe we just need to write a better, how-to kind of document. Maybe training isn't the answer. Maybe it's one-on-one mentoring for an individual. You know that they know how to do something, but they just need some help with motivation or some help in, more of those interpersonal kind of skills. So it might be a one-on-one coaching program rather than a training program. And of course, like everything, it always comes back to our learners, our cohorts, who they are, what their needs are, what their characteristics are, and how we can identify within a training needs analysis the best way to meet those needs. So our training, when it's rolled out, has the best chance of achieving the outcomes that we are setting out to achieve at the beginning. A key thing with most training programs, whether it's accredited or not accredited, is that it's got some kind of a benchmark, some sort of thing that we're aiming for. some way of being able to evaluate at the end of the program, did it achieve what we wanted it to achieve? And like all good planning tools, the more specific and measurable you can make those benchmarks, the more obtainable they are and reasonable and within a time frame, then the greater your chance of success. So again, as we know, although we see it often in workplaces, really it's a bit unrealistic to plonk in a new piece of equipment in 3 days time and then expect everybody able to use it completely if you don't have the right amount of a time frame to undertake that training. Look, sometimes it happens, and we are living in a current environment where, and Shirella and I were talking about this before. I come from a family of teachers, and my sister-in-laws are right now getting ready to take their teaching online from primary school. Well, in many respects, they're being forced to upskill themselves, upskill their colleagues. The schools themselves need to pull in the platforms, get everybody up. So sometimes you don't have the luxury of as much time as you would like to be able to roll out a training program. That's the reality. That's life. But in a perfect world, if you can make your goals smart, make sure that they are obtainable within the time frame, we all know that gives the best chance of success and of the training program from the TNA meeting the needs that are there. A good TNA with great goals, smart goals, will really reduce the risk of training failure. Again, I'm sure we've all had an experience that, or we've heard about, hopefully not our own training programs, but we've heard about people going, well, that was a waste of time. I went off to, whether it's a day session or a series of sessions over a period of months, and they look back and go, well, that didn't achieve the objective, and sometimes that can be a very costly mistake. We spend a lot of money. It does happen sometimes, getting in experts or, getting in consultants to run a series of programs, and you come at the end and you go, well, that didn't really achieve the objectives. Whatever was the issue that you were trying to solve in the beginning, it remains, and sometimes it can actually be worse because it's just complicated the matter or confused the matter. So spending time, like anything, at the beginning of planning, getting good data, identifying what exactly are we trying to achieve, how will we know we've achieved it, what does it look like, what do we need to do to step from A to Z. That really enhances the chance of success and reduces the risk of any kind of failure. The good thing about a good detailed TNA as well is it can be shared with both management, so that management understands why this training is happening, but also share it with the potential participants so that they can see this is not just another talk fest or a waste of their time or change for change's sake. This is where this program has come from. Working with them to identify, have we missed anything? Is there something else that's required as well? In order to be able to develop things like just-in-time knowledge, skills and abilities through the training. So, we've talked about this. Sometimes companies invest in training programs that fail to bring in returns. And that can be really frustrating for everybody. Particularly it can be frustrating for teams or the workers who often see what they perceive to be a waste of money, being thrown at the problem for no observable gain or return on that money. And that can be a bit defeating for organisational culture, when people feel like, wow, I've just spent a huge amount of my effort, my time going through this program, and all for what, all for naught. And a key thing is to be aware of that whole potential for a mismatch between the training efforts and the organisational goals. And really developing a TNA, it is a bit of a circular process, And it's important at different parts in the training cycle to keep coming back and saying, hang on a minute, is this actually still meeting our goals? Because again, like anything, we've seen it before, you think that you want to make a cake, you get out the ingredients, and before you know it, you go, da-da, and here's, sausages, mashed potato, and veggies. And it's like, wow, that's not what we set out to do. But somewhere along the planning process, we lost sight of the goal of what we're trying to achieve. So revisiting back, what was the problem? What were we trying to achieve to fix the problem? Is our training program still doing that? Managing scope is another key part of that, because once we start looking at, oh, here's a problem, this training can cover this, and then that scope creep where it ends up trying to fix 101 problems rather than that first problem, you can end up with something that's just massive, where actually we just needed a small training program to be targeted and directed towards that identified issue. So the other thing a good TNA does, and the more detail you have in your training needs analysis, the more detail in the planning is we can get to this whole thing of budgets. So we can identify and really nut out, what is this going to cost? Both from physical money outlays to buy the whatever needs to be bought, but also in time and effort. Time and effort for the people to develop the program, time and effort for other people to undertake the training, to ensure they've got enough time within the program to absorb the knowledge, to absorb the information that's being passed on, to practice the skills, to practice working with the new machinery or the new platforms. And all of that may not cost money physically going out of the bank, but time is money. So being able to factor that in and make allowances for it is really important, so that organisations don't get a quarter of the way through a program and go, whoa, we've run out of money, we've run out of time, we've run out of effort for this program. And I love this last line, a well-conducted training needs analysis is actually an investment. And that's important for trainers or program designers to be able to help organisations see, now this might cost something in cash, time and effort, but it's not just a cost line item, investment. Because once this has been done and rolled out, we're going to do things more productively, or it's going to address that problem, it's going to fix that problem. So, and this was from 2 weeks ago when we talked about identifying training needs, and we then began going through a little bit of that content. So the other stuff that we've just been talking about today should sound familiar to you. It should be like, yep, I understand that. It should be making sense, I guess, and feeling like, yes, I'm confident about this, I understand about this. And you might remember from 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit more about that whole idea of the scope and making sure that scope creep didn't happen, and the benchmarks. If that's the organisational benchmark of we want to do something different, or for accredited training programs, those benchmarks will be units of competency or qualifications. And the whole documenting the process, that is the training needs analysis. From the beginning of what's the problem, what options do we have to be able to fix it, what's our program going to look like, where we're going to get our content from, who's it going to be directed at, how are we going to know if it's beginning to be a success, how are we going to assess it. So the forum starter, oh, and I've missed out a little bit there, for this, well, actually, I think that's, sorry, I think I should have deleted that one. Here it is. So last week, some people may not have done the forum post last week, and that's fine. But last week there was that case study, and I've duplicated it here, about the large mining company. And last week, the idea of the forum was to try and create a learner profile based on this case study of the large mining company. And then this week's or fortnight's forum for this subject is thinking about an outline of the activities you would plan for if you were conducting a training needs analysis. So that'd be the kind of activities like talking to HR or talking to managers, talking to the potential users of the training program about what they need. Again, as I said at the beginning of this recording, by the end of the semester, for maximum marks, we just need 5 for each subject forum posts that are referenced. And so I think from memory with this subject, there might be like 12 or 9 or something like that. So this may not be a forum, an actual forum that you end up participating in for whatever reason, but just outlining it there for your information. And if you need any, with the forums too, if you put it straight into the forum rather than putting it into a Word document and attaching the Word document, then other people can see your forum post and they can learn from you and learn with you. So this was a bit of different stuff from the case study. And the forums participation again it is like only 10% over the number of forum posts. So it makes sense to be able to decide where you're going to put your greatest effort and greatest time as far as assessments go. The idea of the forum posts is that collaborative learning from each other, enjoying each other's points of view when they put them up in the forums. So we've done really well with this. Next week we'll be back here again and we'll be focusing on weeks 7 and 8 of the resource development subject, and the week after we'll do weeks 7 and 8 of this subject again, training needs analysis. And then we've got 2 weeks off. 2 weeks off as far as online sessions go, but I think for most people that'll be time that they'll be using for some of their assessments and things like that. We can talk more about assessments next week and the week after. So I feel a bit like I've gone right through that. I might have stopped you from asking any questions or prevented any discussion, Sharella. I'm sorry about that. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with those training needs analysis or the idea behind that?
No, I just trying to find out the forums, right? Is it 5 forums per subject or 5 forums for both the subjects?
5 per subject. So this semester
10
you
forums.
10 all up, yeah. So 5, but they don't have to be long. They don't have to be war and peace. They don't have to be, really 2 paragraphs each, 3 paragraphs, can well and truly be enough. The key thing is, and again, that's for maximum marks. So if you look at the rubrics, you'll see to get maximum marks, it's 5+ forum posts and referenced ones. So, you can identify the ones that resonate with you, that you're interested in, and just pop up 1 or 2 paragraphs with a reference, and do that, for maximum marks for 5 for each of the subjects. But I think from memory in the rubrics, even 3 will get you a credit, I think. So the assessment of the forum posts is like the number, the participation from, I think it's 2 to 3 up to 5, and then the other line items in the rubrics are that referencing and that they, address what's there and stuff. So I know it sounds like a lot, but I think you'll find in a lot of the other groups, though they're bigger numbers of people, so there are a lot more people in the other groups, but they're actually enjoying it. They're enjoying reading each other's forum posts. But again, I think that's the case when you've got more people in a group. But again, we can talk more about that if we want to next week. And it's not due until the very end of the semester. So there's quite a bit of time over that as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also about the progress, if you can finish up the subject earlier, you could start off the next semester faster.
Absolutely, yes, yes. So that's what we were talking about before we started the recording. Oh no, just when we in the beginning was I'm talking to Sue about, and it's really come to light potentially if there are some people who end up getting, stood down or laid off, and it was kind of raised from another group. Someone said, "So if I get this done, what can I do?" I think they're a little bit like they're thinking they don't want to be sitting at home doing nothing, and also maybe they're thinking once this current virus situation calms down, a bit like what you were saying, Sharella, gee, when it calms down, I might end up being really, really busy
Yeah.
towards the end of the semester, towards the end of the year. So if there's a way I can get my head around some of the other stuff, we'll do that. So over the holidays, I will be looking at the best and most effective way of doing that. And but again, it'll be just there for people who might want it or yeah. So Shirella, was there anything else that you wanted to say while this is being recorded? If not, I'll stop the recording in a minute and give it a chance to save down, and then we can just have a chat if you like.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, well, Cheryl and Jackie, I'm assuming you guys will watch this individually. I'm hoping you both are travelling okay and that there's not too much craziness happening in your world. Well, no more craziness than is happening in everybody's world. Um, if there's anything that I can do for you, you know where I am, just reach out. And hopefully we might get a chance to see you guys next week. So I'm going to stop the recording. Now, thank you, Sharella, for coming into the session. Really appreciate it. Bye, guys.